Hello, I'm Steve Fowler, President of the Board of the Occidental Center for the Arts, and I'm here with David Benefiel, the Treasurer of the Board and one of the very valuable volunteers at the Arts Center. We're going to talk about the Arts Center a little bit, and we're going to find out a little more about David. So, David, I can say that you're a retired a medical doctor. And I think it was anesthesiology was your specialty. Is that correct?
Yes. I'm still an anesthesiologist, but I'm not practicing now.
Does that mean that you're licensed? I mean, if I needed some anesthetics, you could. I was having a leg amputated with somebody in a kitchen. You could administer it.
Yeah. Yes. I think if push comes to shove and we were in the jungle somewhere and there was nobody else around, yeah, I could do the job.
If you had,
for sure.
If you had the drugs with you, right?
Yes, right. We could come up with something.
Whiskey at least.
For sure.
Anyway, but and how long have you been a retired physician?
Well, I retired in 2003, so I've been retired. This is my 10th year of retirement. So I needed to find something to do, and fortunately it all started with my daughter, who took up the recorder when she was in elementary school. And through that I took up the recorder, and then she dropped it, but I kept playing, and that's how I met all the people who play recorder in Sonoma County. And so when we moved, and that's how I found the house that we live in, and that I bought that from a recorder player, and through that, then I met Patrick and Nancy, and that's how I ended up being invited to be on the board of the Center for the Arts.
Wow. But it started with the musical pursuit of the recorder.
Yes, because my daughter and I took up the recorder to support her, but it stuck with me, but it didn't stick with her.
That's fascinating. And so is the recorder community in Sonoma County, is it fairly small? Do you all know each other, or are you just part of a little group that you know? I remember at the Arts Center we had a large recorder concert. Was it like there were maybe 15 or 20 people on the stage, all playing recorders at one time? Is that typical?
Well, San Francisco and Boston are the real hotbeds of early music. And there's the San Francisco Early Music Society. They are big supporters of recorder music. And then there's the East Bay Recorder Society. And probably the biggest concentration of recorder players is in the East Bay. And the East Bay Recorder Society meets monthly, and they probably have 20 or 30 people playing. There are lots of professionally trained recorder players in the East Bay, and that's really the heart of the community. In the South Bay, and there's also big recorder communities. So really Sonoma County is a much smaller concentration of recorder players. So but the San Francisco Early Music Society sponsors concerts, it sponsors workshops, and there are workshops going on all the time. And of course the big event is the Boston Early Music Society, and they sponsor a big international workshop. One year it's in Boston, and then the alternate year it's in Berkeley. And there are people who come from all over the world. There are musicians, there are composers, there are instrument makers who make all kinds of early music instruments, not just recorders, but early guitars, early keyboards, harpsichords, those kind of things. And it's all there. There's lots of music, and there's a big public arena where all the instruments and the music are for sale.
Wow, sounds wonderful. But I know you're doing more than just playing recorder, because I've been to your property and I know you're doing a lot of farming. You have several acres of apples, and you have a big bee hive operation going on. Probably some other things I don't. I know you grow a lot of vegetables. Do you come from a farm background? Because it seems to me you're a natural farmer, and I'm wondering how that. When did that get expressed in your life?
Well, when I was a kid, we got a place up in Vermont, and I would spend my summers up in Vermont. And that's dairy farming mostly, but also vegetables. Mm-hmm. And that's where I got my love of the outdoors and my love of farming. So when we retired, we moved up to Sonoma County, and we started bit by bit, first with the apples, and then with the bees, and mm-hmm. and mm-hmm. now hard apple cider and organic chickens.
Oh, okay. The chickens are new, aren't they?
Yeah, yeah. We have a certified organic farm, so everything we raise is organic.
Certification, that's not easy. It takes, you can't do it in 1 year. It takes like 3 years to establish something.
That's right. Well, it depends on your track record. If the land has been unused or fallow, you can get your certification more or less right away, because none of the prohibited chemicals mm-hmm.
Presumably
have been used during that period.
Right.
But our farm that we bought was a functioning orchard, and it was under conventional management. So
by the Jewell family.
By the Jewell family. So for 3 years, then we had to do it organically mm-hmm. without being certified. And mm-hmm. then in the 4th year, that's our first certified organic crop.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what's the certification agency now for these?
It's called CCOF.
Okay, I know CCOF. Yeah. I used to be a member.
Yeah.
But I know that the federal government's got involved in certification, and you know, that was very controversial among organic farmers at one point. But yeah, the CCOF is the California Certified Organic Farmers.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
The funny thing about bees is organic honey, because mm-hmm. The federal government considers bees to be livestock. So to have the question is, what is really the meaning of having organic honey? Because mm-hmm. you can't control where your bees get their nectar.
Exactly.
And because they can roam up to 2 miles away. Mm-hmm. So, but from the federal government standpoint, bees are considered livestock. And as long as you don't use antibiotics or feed them non-organic food, your bees are considered organic mm-hmm. and your honey is considered organic. Mm-hmm. So when you see an organic label on honey, it's really meaningless.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so you're farming and you're playing the recorder, and but you still had some time left over, because I know that when you came on board as a volunteer at the Arts Center, you played a crucial role in the period of time when we were building the center, which is in the old Harmony School, and where we were given a multi-purpose room and a classroom, and they were in disrepair, and the developer Orrin Thiessen was remodeling the entire campus, and for a long period of time we had no power, no gas, and then we began the process of remodeling with very, very little money, no major grants. There was no sugar daddy standing there with the $1 million it would have taken to do a complete remodel. So I know your skills were vital in the period when we were building the Arts Center back up. And I think, I'm just going to summarize, I know you've done electrical work there, and heating work, and carpentry, and acoustical work, and you've worked on the sound system. Am I leaving anything out?
I think that's pretty much it. When we got the place in Vermont, when I was a child, it was really a dilapidated house that had been abandoned for 20 years. And so that was our family project, to totally rebuild the house from the bottom, from the foundation up. And so that's where I picked up a lot of these skills from the concrete foundation to the shingles on the roof and everything in between.
And how old were you at that during that period?
Well, when we first got the place, I was 5 years old. So my job at that stage was to be down in the ditch below ground with a hammer pounding on the forms to get the air bubbles out of the concrete, while my older brothers and my father poured the concrete, in. Yeah, that's my sister and I were there with the hammers getting the bubbles out of the concrete.
So you were small enough to fit into, into the trench.
Down in the trench.
I don't think OSHA would have approved of that, but you know, those were the good old days. So yeah, you have a lot of skills, and I know you have a complete workshop at your home, and that you know, you have tools for a variety of trades. You want to describe some of the tools that you have brought to our enterprise? I mean, because it seems like you have everything we need.
Well, thank goodness for the Midgley Flea Market. That's one of Sebastopol's great treasures. So through that and through other means, I've amassed what my neighbor calls a gentleman workshop. So that involves woodworking, so skills, table saw and band saw and planer and so on, and hand tools like woodworking planes and so on.
You collected planes as a hobby too, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. That was a phase I was. I'm pretty much done with that. But yes, woodworking planes and the restoration of woodworking planes, something to do. And then I've got the metalworking shop, so I have a welder and then milling machine and a metalworking lathe, things like that, and that's for the metalworking.
So. I know you brought all these skills to the Art Center, and then I guess Patrick Fanning brought you onto the board because you were friends with his wife, Nancy, who's a recorder player. Is that kind of how it happened?
That's right.
And I had the good sense to ask Patrick to be on the board. That was one of my best decisions ever. And he kindly joined. This is about 2008 or 9. Do you remember when you started? My gosh, it's all blurred together, but
around that time.
It's been about 4 or 5 years, right?
Yes, it's been a while.
And then, so little by little, we've managed to use your talents one by one until we asked you to be treasurer. And do you have a background in finance? You know, but you seem to have mastered the difficulties of the books very well. Were you, as a doctor, did you do your own books and so on?
I didn't do my own books as a doctor, no, but I was in a medical group with a bunch of other anesthesiologists. Toward the end, there were 50 anesthesiologists in our group, and I was on the board of directors of our group. And I was the treasurer of our medical group. Oh, okay. And then I was asked to join the board of directors of an anesthesia billing company up in Portland. That was a doctor-owned billing company for 1,000 physicians up and down the West Coast. And so I was on the finance committee for that anesthesia billing company. So I learned more about accounting there and generally accepted accounting practices. Yeah. Of course, it's very different because both in the medical group and in the billing company, you have staff. They handle all the bookkeeping. Right. And as the treasurer, your job is mostly oversight and asking for reports to be prepared. In a volunteer organization, you don't have any support staff. You really have to be pushing all the buttons on the computer. So it's very different. It's what you call a working board as opposed to an advisory board. So very different. Yeah. So it required taking some time at the JC. I took a couple of courses in how to use QuickBooks, and I spend a lot of time on the phone with the helpline too, to make sure we get the reports we need and get the analysis done that's required. Yeah. And then, of course, the other intricacy is learning the ins and out of the 990. Anybody who has been involved in a nonprofit knows with great fear with the 990, which is the Internal Revenue Service's yoke that is placed around the neck of every person involved in the accounting of the nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a great burden, but it's also a great opportunity, which I learned this year when I took a seminar put on by the IRS on how to prepare the 990. And that is, the 990 is really your face on the internet for anybody who wants to give you a grant, who wants to find out about your organization, because your tax return is a public document, and that it shows what you've done over the years, how much money you've taken in, what you've spent, and you're supposed to describe your mission and how you've spent your money, how many people you have reached, how many volunteers you have, and of course all the other dirty little secrets of some nonprofits who, let's say, have highly compensated officials and so on, which of course we're all an all-volunteer organization. But when you look at the return, you can see that the IRS is trying to find out if there's abuses involved. So,
and there are abuses, of course.
But it's also a great opportunity because there's a chance for the preparer to talk to dilate at great length about the virtues of the volunteer organization and the mission of the organization and all the accomplishments that the organization has done. And that's there for public viewing. And that's one of the goals of the treasurer, is to present the organization in the best light in its most public face, which is your 990, which is your tax return of the nonprofit.
Yeah, and I've been learning along with you at somewhat slower pace that even if you're talking to your neighbor about making a donation, when it comes time, they're going to check the 990, and they may have a foundation. They would rather work through a foundation than to give you a direct donation. So oftentimes, even though you may know the person, the donor personally, as I did in the case of a neighbor who I pitched to in year one, and in year three, and she in year three, her foundation gave us a $5,000 donation. So, but they wouldn't have done that if they hadn't. They vetted us. She didn't. She asked the foundation to vet. So you have a very important job, which is to create the appearance, not the appearance, but the actuality of a responsible nonprofit corporation that pays its bills and has adequate resources to do what it needs to do.
That's one of the faces of any nonprofit, is the tax return. Of course, there's the volunteers, there's the programming, there are people such as yourself who are there at the performances to talk to the audience. There's the performances themselves, the performers themselves. All of these things are part of the public face of the volunteer organization.
So let me ask you, David, I mean, this is a lot of hours you put in and a lot of years, and what's the payoff for you? I mean, I was reading an article in the paper this morning, and it said that sometimes being paid for doing something that you were volunteering before actually has the effect of inhibiting it, because they're getting a non-monetary payoff. They're getting self-respect. They're doing a job that they know they can do, and they're doing it well. They're helping their community, whatever in a nonprofit that you do. Is that the payoff, or is it that you like art and you want to support it? I mean, or is it all those things? What can you say about that?
When I was in graduate school, I really got a chance to appreciate the arts because there were lots of fine art shows, lots of music, drama, chamber music, symphonic music. The campus was very rich in those resources, being between Philadelphia and New York, and tickets were cheap for the students. And I think that's when I really gained an appreciation for the arts. And when you retire, you need something to do, and as a physician, you feel important, you feel productive. You're doing something of great value to society, and it's very rewarding. And I think that the arts are of great value to society. And not being an artist myself, this is a way for me to support the arts. And because I think the arts are very important. It's part of our culture. Our society is more than going to work during the day and coming home at night and eating your meal and watching TV. There's a lot more to society and to culture, and this is my way of being part of that. But also, I think it's fun to work with the other volunteers in the construction projects. There's great enjoyment in swinging a hammer and hoisting a beam. You know, a bunch of people all hoisting a beam together.
Sure.
And sitting in the hall and watching a performance and knowing that you had a hand in the final product. It's very satisfying.
Okay, that's a very good answer. Is there anything you'd like to say about the Occidental Center for the Arts before I give a little, well, I'll give the blurb. Occidental Center for the Arts has a website, www.occidentalcenterforthearts.org, and we have programs almost every weekend. Tonight there's a swing dance at 7 p.m. with a free lesson. Next week it's a film with the filmmaker present called Long Song of Mongolia, Jonathan Stuppin's premiere. We have an indie film series going on. We have book launches when we have classes. So you can call the Arts Center at 874-707-874-9392 and getting at least a recording telling you what's going on. Now that I've given the pitch, I want to ask David, you know, what is it is there anything else you'd like to say about the Occidental Center for the Arts that seems unique or, you know, unusual or worthy of mention?
I don't really know how to answer that, but I would like to say that it's a very exciting time for the Center for the Arts. Perhaps you've already mentioned about the classrooms and expanding our program.
Not really.
Well, I think that's probably something we should talk a little bit about. The center recently was able to borrow money from some very generous individuals at a favorable rate, a sub-market rate, in order to buy 3 substantial sized classrooms. And we're going to use that to forward our mission. Classroom in the fine art. We have another classroom where dance and Pilates is going on, and then a third classroom we're hoping to use for other art-related projects through either short-term or long-term rental. So this is a great chance for the Occidental Center for the Arts to expand its reach in the community. And so this is a very exciting time for the center. And also, now that a lot of the nuts and bolts have been put in place for the center, this is a chance for some of the volunteers to move in other directions, and that means looking for public financing and grants to develop some of the curricula that will be used in our classrooms. And that's an area that I think is going to be our next big move and our next big step forward.
Right. The purchase of 3 classrooms almost doubled our space, and it's going to take some time to consolidate that and fill it with programs. And so I think that what that has done in the big picture is has slowed down the impulse to finish the build out of the auditorium itself, which We did hire an architect several years ago, but actually before you were on the board. And we have plans, pretty much working plans about how to improve the auditorium, add a lobby, a backstage, and improve the amphitheater. But I think that's going to be on hold until we have used the additional space we have. I know the Sebastopol Center for the Arts quite synchronistically has just doubled its space by taking on the Sebastopol Veterans Auditorium as their home. And that has a lot of responsibilities that go with it too. They have to manage the building and so on. So we have our hands full for the next foreseeable period.
Yeah, well, the thing was, this was a chance to buy this property, and it was either now or never. Mm-hmm. So we really didn't have a choice. Mm-hmm. And right. The development of the Harmony Village was proceeding along with the Art Center taking over our current location. Mm-hmm. So we basically had to, it was now or never. Mm-hmm. So mm-hmm. Basically this was forced upon us. Mm-hmm. And we look at it as a great opportunity. Right. And it will delay what we call our phase 3, mm-hmm. which is as you described. But in the long run, I think it was in our best interest to get those classrooms.
Absolutely, and at a good price, because the bank that took over the property after Orrin's unfortunate having to leave was selling them at a reasonable price, so which probably would never come around again.
That's right.
So yeah, that was a great. But it did force us to grow perhaps at a rate we wouldn't have chosen. But and I appreciate all the work you've done, David. And I think we're running out of time, so I want to thank you again for talking with us. And good luck with the Occidental Center for the Arts.
Thank you, and the same to you, Steve.
Yeah.